Welcome to Thrive Radio. I'm your host, Amy Montgomery, entrepreneur and digital marketing agency owner. Today, my guest is Michael Bergmann. He's a visionary leader and innovator with over 3 decades of experience at Nike, from starting in retail during high school to becoming the global director of sustainability. Michael's journey is nothing short of inspiring. He's the founder of IncubatorU, a transformative platform dedicated to unlocking the untapped potential within organizations through a unique 5-step methodology. Michael's work has not only driven groundbreaking innovation in products and processes, but he has also brought communities together, turning dreams into reality. Join us as we dive into his remarkable story and insights on fostering innovation and overcoming barriers. Michael, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. It's great to be here. I appreciate it.
Yes, definitely. So your career at Nike is legendary. What was the spark that ignited your passion for innovation and product development? And can you share a little bit about your journey and how it led you to create IncubatorU?
Yeah, so I don't know if I would classify as legendary, but it was long. It was definitely fueled by passion. It all started, I was a lifelong runner, ran in middle school, high school, and it all started when I live in Portland, Oregon. So I happened to drive. As soon as I got my driver's license, I went and visited the Nike headquarters, which is a very small, in a strip mall at the time, and asked if they needed shoes to be tested. When truth be told, I was just looking for a free pair of shoes. And as it turned out, I ended up bringing 3 big boxes of shoes to my high school team, and was an unofficial wear test analyst as a 16-year-old. And so from that point on, it was always asking myself, why not? And it led me to a lot of different experiences and a lot of different adventures at Nike.
So starting out in high school and climbing up through global leadership roles, that's an incredible feat. What were some of the pivotal moments that defined your journey?
Yeah, so just backing up, so I had a 35+ year career at Nike and worked in a variety of areas that were focused on product. And I was always passionate about product and the performance and making it better. So whether it was teaching people about the product as what they call a tech rep, or as an econ, to helping build product. I was in China and Indonesia, and I helped run some factories that were actually making the product. And then I was on the product development side through most of my career at Nike. And it was really about taking design and the athlete's insights and really trying to meld those together into helping a product improvement performance in whatever sport it was I was working in. So I'd say that was my number one passion, is how do you create product that helps someone perform better than they would normally.
Mm-hmm. So what were some of the toughest challenges you faced, and how did you overcome them in that role?
I would say on the product development side, the challenges that you always faced was a leader, is a leader. And we would always try things that had never been tried before, from air to Flyknit to just different blending new technologies and applying them to footwear. And over time, including rubber compounds and just a wide variety of things that we would test and try, and they would have to work and make it work with these athletes. On the manufacturing side, gaining some insight into that, it really allowed me to see how products were made and the impact it could have on the back end and you mentioned before, my last role at Nike, I was the global director of sustainability. And that in itself was a challenge I'd say the biggest challenge was we wanted to continue to make more product,
Mm-hmm.
but with less impact to the earth. And that was a huge, and to be able to help educate and influence and specify specific products or process in that process to really reduce the waste, reduce the impact of the earth. That was an incredible challenge to overcome. And a lot of it was based on just meeting people where they were at and trying to find that piece of the story that was relevant to them that they could contribute in their small way.
I like that. So you decided to create Incubator U after your long tenure at Nike. What drove you to take that leap, and what vision do you have for the next venture?
Yeah. So Incubator U really started towards the end of my career at Nike. I had done everything that I really wanted to do. I'd worked in multiple categories. I had invented I had multiple patents. I worked with amazing athletes, and I also helped build amazing teams within the organization. And one of the things I discovered through my career there was um, Nike hired amazingly smart, brilliant young people, and they've got 30,000 resumes a month. And you could have a Harvard MBA working, handing out towels at the fitness center because they wanted to work for Nike. But what I just started to discover is a leader within the organization, but then also a mentor and a coach to many of those young, brilliant employees, was there was not a real pathway for great ideas to percolate up through the organization and go see the light of day because they weren't in innovation or they weren't in the right department. There could be someone that works in the customer service area that had a brilliant idea on footwear or apparel. And so what I the problem I was trying to solve was, how do you elevate and engage those ideas and pull those ideas forward and bring them into an employee-led innovation center that basically could help percolate it out within the organization. So I started Incubator U with the concept of an employee-led innovation center where people could bring their ideas. They could, and then I, being there for 30 plus years, I knew the pathways to get things done faster than most people. I knew who to call or who might be able to solve this problem or who was in this department. And so the concept of Incubator U was really, how do you bring those ideas to life, pressure test them within the organization, see where there were barriers, and perhaps figure out ways to get over them or around them. And so I got about 60% of the way there within Nike with Incubator U. And the role, my VP sponsor was moved to a different reporting structure. And at that point in time, I realized that this dream of mine within Nike to help these employees really realize their dreams was going to come to an end. And I felt it was too good of an idea to really not capitalize on. So I made the choice to retire, and I called it, I rewired. Rewired from Nike in 2014. I walked away with my head held high, with just amazing experiences, but then also amazing relationships still intact. And so it was really a great move on my part. And then I branded Incubator U based on, a good brand is based on good core values. And so I branded Incubator U based on the values I held, not only as a business person, a catalyst, or in a individual. I branded the company based on that. And I'm proud to say that I look back at the brand document that I created 10 years ago, and it's still the same. So that's the story with Incubator U. The idea is it's evolved over time I've discovered that I have this methodology that it took a couple people to identify it for me, or to share with me that, hey, you actually have a process.
Mhm.
And so I looked back and I started to look at that with the filter on some of the things that I had done, with whether it was organizationally at Nike, like transforming a team, creating a new rubber compound, having the patent for a modular tooling project. All these things were, I went back in time and they were right. I did have this process that I applied. And a friend of mine at Nike early on said, it was towards the end of my career, she said, man, if you could actually teach this to people, that's your retirement. And then fast forward about 6 years later, I was in a conversation with a business coach that really didn't know much about my background other than the projects I was working on. And she just looked at me, she says, you actually have a process that you don't even realize that you're able to get all of this stuff done. And so let's figure out how to package it up. And so that was the birth of the IncubatorU 5-step methodology. And so as soon as I started to apply that in a wide variety of projects, and it's been like a fire hose. It's been incredibly fun to see not only how it can be applied, but how it can engage everyone else in the process.
Gosh, I love that, especially because so many times we think about innovation and we think, how do you innovate a physical product? But this is a perfect example of how you've innovated a process and invented this process. And it's easy to overlook something like that. That's pretty exciting. So can you delve a little bit more into your 5-step methodology and how it transforms organizations?
Yes. So the 5 steps are imagine, identify, initiate, implement, and integrate. And the graphic is circular and imagine is in the middle. And so the very simple description of this 5-step methodology is if everybody's had an idea of, hey, I'd love to figure out how to do this. And that's where your imagination comes. As adults, we've been beaten down and it's like, sometimes we're just told, hey, you can't do that. And so what I want this methodology to do is just unleash that creative freedom and allow people to really dream big. And there's nothing wrong with that. It might not completely get to the end state, but there's no reason you should put barriers or a framework around your dreams. So the first step is imagine. And that's, hey, I've got a big idea. And my big idea with Incubator U is innovation can come from anywhere and anyone. That's my big idea. And so the second step is identify. And what we do here is everybody has their own personal resource network. You have your network, I have my network. Now we're part of each other's network. And that inner sanctum, that inner network doesn't change that much in your lifetime. You have your go-to people you call all the time.
Yeah.
And so what I do in the identify phase is I have people physically write down on a piece of paper in a 10 to 15 minute exercise. Their name is in the middle. Their inner sanctum network is just around them in a circle. And then people that they really admire or they want to get to know or they admire their work or their values or whatever starts to build those outer circles. And so basically that's what I call a personal resource map. And what that does is if you get a group of people together that build their own personal resource maps, and then you pull them together, and then you look at, there's always going to be some intersections. There's going to be some intersections between those things. So if you have your big idea and you have your personal resource map, and maybe your personal resource map can't fulfill that big idea, but you need some help from someone else. Maybe someone in that group has the answer to that barrier. And so all of a sudden what happens is this synergy happens where, oh, this person can maybe reach out to them and tell them what we're trying to do with this big idea. And so there's the imagine, the identify, the initiate is just do it. It's okay to just ask. And this not only works with companies or organizations or products, but I talk to college graduates or high school graduates about, hey, here's your network. and you really admire this person that went to this school or works for this company, and you'd love to talk to them. And maybe you have a second person removed that you can that knows this person. And basically, the initiate piece is reach out and don't be fearless, but reach out and say, hey, I really admire my example to you is, man, I admire your podcast. This is amazing. How do you do it? And so you're going to be more likely than not to share that experience with me, because I'm not asking you for anything. I'm just admiring, but also asking you how you got to where you're at. So that's
Yes.
the initiate phase. So there's imagine, identify, initiate. And so you're basically going out, you're seeking help or resources or information that's going to help you move that along towards that big idea. And then the fourth is implement, and that's execution. And these are, you're just doing it. You're not really overthinking it. You're moving things forward. And it might not be perfect. It might be 60%. It might be 70%. It might be 80%, but you're making forward progress, right? And then the last stage is integrate. And that's when it becomes operationalized. So all of a sudden, you've made something better. You've made improvements on it. But then you can always go back to the imagine, because you might not have had that step. You might not have been ready to add that extra thing, but you can, it's a circular, the graphic is circular in nature because you can always go back to any one of those steps.
Mhm.
So that's the 5-step methodology in a nutshell.
That's really good. And I want to point out something that you said that is pretty powerful, because I have this conversation daily, and it was just reaching out to people and caring about them. Because I think that sometimes in the marketing world, people come to me and they're like, I need clients now. And when it comes down to it, it's okay, all you've got to do is start caring about people, essentially. Go out there, be human, be normal, don't be weird, don't sell at people, and connect, find the ways that you can connect.
Yeah.
And I think that oftentimes we make it too hard.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think being authentic, and one of the things I use as a term is you meet people where they're at.
Yeah.
And if you come at somebody thinking you're better than them, or they're going to do something for you, or then you're not going to make much progress. But
Yeah. Yeah.
if you're smart enough to really see where they're at in their journey and their career and their life, and you meet them where they're at, then that's going to open up those pathways of trust and communication and willingness to help. And so that's such an important piece. It's not like something you can, it's a soft skill, but I think
Yeah.
it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Everyone wants the quick. Someone said to me once, he said, I heard somebody that said that he was going to pay $50,000 to learn everything on how to build a newsletter and make a ton of money off of it. And that's how he was going to fast track it. And I said, you know what? He could go out there and spend the $50,000, but the part that you can't speed up is the relationships. He still has to build the relationships with the people that subscribe, right?
Right. Yeah.
And
Right. Yeah.
that's why marketing, like, and outreach and all, is so slow, because people are slow, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be fast. Sometimes you'll meet somebody, you'll resonate really well, and things are great. But yeah, so I think it's funny. We always want the quick fix, and we're trying to make a quick fix out of speeding up relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes it hard.
Yeah.
And in the book, I have a couple of great examples of like where that has worked brilliantly. And there are a couple of my favorite experiences. One was at Nike when I invented a rubber compound, and basically the big idea was make the most durable rubber for Nike's world-class tennis players. And frankly, our rubber was terrible because we didn't think about how the performance was going to impact. And so if you're okay, I'll give you the quick story of where I met a few people. So I was watching our tennis players just destroy the shoes on the court. And I'm saying, how are we going to do this? So the big idea was Oh my gosh, they're like Formula One race cars, and the shoes are their tires. And so that was my imagine. So my identify, I went back to my team. I found one of my teammates who is a chemical engineer, and I said, "Hey, you're not you come from the best schools. You must have someone that works at Firestone or Goodyear." Oh yeah, my roommate did. Can you find out what they use on their Formula One race car tires? Oh yeah, I don't mind calling them. So basically I was able to engage someone that normally wouldn't be engaged, help get the information to solve the problem, but then also share with him how their contribution was going to help. And then the last piece of it was I'm at the Australian Open and I'm talking to I have a credential. I go into the locker room. I talk to the janitor and basically, hey, the people that get punched out of the first and second rounds of the tournament, what do they do with their shoes? Oh, just throw them away. Can I give you a few boxes and I'll just take your garbage out for you? Oh yeah. So I ended up having 60 pairs of tournament worn shoes back on my desk at Nike to reverse engineer and see what every single brand did with their shoes that were completely wear tested. And all I did was I talked to the janitor, I offered to take his garbage out, and I gave him a Roger Federer hat.
That's insane.
But it worked. And
Yeah, it's amazing.
the designers and engineers at Nike were like, "How did you get all these shoes?" I said, "I just gave the guy a hat and I took his garbage out." But I met him where he was at, which is the
Yeah.
key.
Yeah. That's just amazing to me. Yeah. Like I said, we make things so hard when they don't have to be.
Right, exactly.
So, how did IncubatorU facilitate turning an eighth grader's dream into reality?
Yeah, so I got a call one day. So I live in Portland, Oregon. Oregon's a beautiful state. I got a call one day from a community member in a small town called Maupin, and he had heard that I had some experience of helping build an athletic facility in Portland. So he was talking to somebody, my name came up, he called me. So I took it upon myself I was driving over to Central Oregon anyway. So I drove over there and in this town of 450, walked into the South Wasco County High School Teachers Lounge. It's a small school in Oregon, one of the smaller schools in Oregon. And there were 10 people sitting in this room. And they said, "Hey, we understand you know how to build tracks." I'm like, so then I walked out onto this dirt track didn't resemble a track. It looked like a triangle. But as I got to the backstretch, I looked out over the backstretch and it overlooked the beautiful Deschutes River Canyon. It was like the most spectacular view you can imagine. So my imagine was, hey, this could be a spectacular venue for not only track, but for music, for events, for powwows, all these different things. So that was my imagine in my head, but I had to get them there. So we had an imagine session where basically everybody in the room. So I had Holly Miles, who was like an eighth grader at the high school, or she was a freshman at the high school at that point. Her parents, a couple business owners, the mayor, a couple other community members, and we basically created an imagine brainstorming session, but it was really based on the values of that community. Okay. So outdoor recreation, the river is important. All of these pieces were really important. And so we had an imagine session there. And that's where we came up with the Maupin Deschutes River Athletic Complex concept. And it was really, and the story centered around a young girl named Holly Miles. And so that was what we decided that with any imagine, you want to create a great story. Being a marketing guru, you want that story and you want that emotional connection to a project or a product. It's hard to do. It's not like it's the South Wasco County High School track. we created the Maupin Deschutes River Athletic Complex, which had a bigger sound to it. And then Holly, her original insight was, her question to her parents was, she'd go to all these other track meets and she'd have to practice on visiting track. She couldn't really practice hurdles on her own track. So she would not only run the meet, but then she'd go practice these other tracks. And her question to her parents was, why don't we have a real track? And they didn't have an answer. So that was our tagline. Why don't we have a real track? And so that became the North Star for this project. They had not had a track meet there in 62 years. And there are generations of people that remember the last track meet there. And so we basically created a plan around it, and I got an architect involved, a project manager. We told the story to a construction company. So basically we got all these people emotionally involved, including actually got the National Guard to come in and move 800 dump truck loads of dirt to create the footprint so we could put this 8-lane, 400-meter championship level track onto this footprint overlooking the Deschutes River. And today it's probably one of the most spectacular tracks in the state of Oregon. And it took us about 3 years. We started it at the absolute wrong time in history in September of 19. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So we couldn't gather, we couldn't fundraise, schools were closed.
Wow.
It was like, and then like in May of 2022, we had the first track meet in 62 years there, where there were 18 schools, is the district meet. It was a spectacular scene. And these kids that showed up, they called it the Infinity Track because they got off their buses and they looked, and there's this track, and then it just kept the view just kept going down the Deschutes River Canyon, and like an infinity pool. They coined it the Infinity Track.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so Holly was the spokesperson. She became the face of the project. She did an amazing job of speaking to the press and telling her story. And the great news about it is we were able to finish it, tie it up with a bow, have a district meet, have 166 personal best times on that day. And from here on out, it's become really a diamond in that community.
Wow. That's just so amazing. So let's talk a little bit about the companies that have ideas that never come to fruition. What are some of the most common barriers that you see, and how does your methodology help break through the obstacles?
Yeah, I would say a lot of times companies are amazing. They get to a certain point and then they hit a barrier. And what I've found, not only at Nike, but outside of Nike, is once you hit that barrier, I think the most common practice is to go out and find a consultant or to help solve that problem. Like help me get to that next level. But what the IncubatorU 5-step methodology does, it actually taps into the resources that are already there, that are just sitting there, waiting to be asked. And so I'd say this is the difference between if a company is feeling like, hey, we've got a great organization, we've got a great team, we've got talented people, but that some of them are getting a little disenchanted. Maybe they're not being utilized as much as they could be. What this methodology does, it really helps open up that potential. And so it's the same steps. It's imagine, hey, we want to become this type of company, and this is our big idea. And then you pull together to identify, you have the group that pulls together all of here are my personal resources, but then also individually, a lot of people are in a job, and a lot of people within an organization don't know everything about that person. It could be someone like, hey, I speak Spanish or I speak Chinese, or in my other life, I was a track coach or I worked in construction. So there's all of this untapped potential because you're in a certain job, in a certain company, in a certain silo. And so what this does, it helps you open up those other pathways. And so as a and so what I look for in companies like that are change agents. Someone that's a catalyst that's connected, that can talk to people, that can see the bigger picture, but then all of a sudden draw other people in that really might not otherwise be drawn in. And so that's where the methodology really works. It's really tapping into the potential of the human talent within an organization. And if you don't have everything, then that also allows you to identify it and go out and find that. And don't look for a cookie cutter approach to a solution. Hey, first look inside, because it's a lot more cost effective if you're maximizing the potential of the team that's already there.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's really, and then the other piece that it does, it actually helps engage everybody. And it doesn't, so people don't feel like they're left out and they're being heard and they're being valued.
Mm.
So that's where this methodology, and when I launched the book on Amazon, it was #1 in organizational awareness and organizational learning, which doesn't surprise me now, but when I first saw it, it's like, oh, wow, that makes sense, because this is about evolving organizations to make them more performance and productive and efficient use of the resources.
Yeah, definitely. So I do want to mention your book, Innovation from the Ground Up. And you talk about the just do it mentality. So, how crucial is the right mindset in overcoming challenges and driving innovation? And you and I talked a little bit about this, where our minds do block us from success and can get in our way. So, I'd love to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I would say a couple of things that I always saw at Nike and that never slowed me down, but I've always felt that fear stifles creativity. And so one of my taglines with IncubatorU is fearless innovation together. So by removing fear out of, and it could be fear of, hey, I'm going to upset my boss, or I'm talking to someone that's in a different department, or maybe someone's going to think this is a stupid idea. All of those negative thoughts that go into your head, you just need to remove it and be fearless. And fearless means and that's the just do it mentality. It's, hey, I'm just going to do it. And so if you recognize and acknowledge that you're not moving forward on something because you're afraid or you're fearful of what someone's going to say or what someone's going to think or what's it going to do your compensation, but if you actually remove fear out of the formula and be fearless, that in itself is invigorating. It helps you get to that next level. So that's my advice, is be fearless. And maybe people don't like it, but that's okay, because you're in control of what you feel is right.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really can break through barriers. You made me think of a time when I used to do mountain biking down I lived in Seattle and would go up to the mountains, but I didn't know that it was dangerous. And of course I put all the equipment on and everything, but I had so much fun just riding down the mountains. And then it was later that I found out that I should be afraid. And I think that sometimes, as a perfect example of, sometimes it's good to not know that you should be afraid, and that I think sometimes our failures that we experience cause fear because we don't want to fail again. And If you can get past that and be like, I'm just going to try one more time. I'm going to find a strategy. I'm going to go for it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's one of, and so I have 4 kids and a lot of their friends, and I talk to them about, hey, go reach out to this person. And if you're curious about what they do and how they got to where they're at, then reach out and find out. The worst thing they can say is no. And then you figure out a different way to ask it. So there's no rule. You can't ask somebody to help you become better. And
Yeah.
normally if you do that and you first ask them, wow, I really admire where you're at, and how did tell me about the experiences that you've had that have made you the person you are today. And 99% of the time, people love talking about themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. So, what trends do you see emerging in the world of innovation, and how can companies stay ahead?
I think obviously AI is a big trend, but I happen to be, you got the AI on one side, but then you have almost this rejection of technology on the other. So you've had these polarizing things. The pendulum has swung in multiple ways. But I think in the middle, the thing that I see is that's relevant and it will never change is that human interaction. And I think innovation is a big word, but like everybody thinks they've got it all figured out with these processes and all these things. But at the end of the day, it's about people, their ideas. And then if you can have these technologies complement that and be additive versus replacing human connection, that's the beauty. That's what I see right now is I think companies that figure that out are going to be way better than the ones that are relying so much on one side or the other.
What do you think has been your truth that has gotten you this far in your journey?
I think my truth has been I've always been authentic and true to myself. Haven't really felt that and I would say at times it's been difficult because I don't necessarily feel like I fit into a box.
Mhm.
So because I see my truth is I see the potential in everything, and I love to make positive change in anything that I lean into. And if that's telling a story or helping engage a community or pull people along to help build a better product, that I think the authentic, trusted approach to things is really my truth. So,
Love that. So, if you were able to give yourself one piece of advice when you first started out on your journey, what would it be?
first started on my journey at Nike, or just
Either one. Let's do either one.
well, my 30 years at Nike, and I would never change it for anything. But when I retired, I took a insights analysis. It's like a, and I realized that after I took that, what's the name? It's something insights, but it's basically but I realized that I'm doing what I want to do now. Like I'm a storyteller, I'm a pioneer, I'm a catalyst. Those things don't necessarily fit into a corporate environment. And so to me, if I would have started doing what I'm doing now earlier, maybe I wouldn't have had the same experiences. But I'm so glad that I'm doing it now. And I want to spread that. Like I want to spread the ability for people to discover that on their own. Not only people, but helping companies overcome some of the problems and barriers that they have.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. I don't know if you've heard of it, but Gallup has an assessment called the Business Profile 10. And when I started my business, I took my personality type and all the things that it said on paper that my personality type would enjoy doing. And instead of looking at a list of jobs, I looked at a list of tasks. And then I took the Business Profile 10, which tells you who do you have to be as a business owner to be happy, and who do you have to partner with. And it said that I'm the high risk, the innovator, and I need to be the expert, and I need to partner with the salesperson and the connector. And I relate with what you were saying, because in the corporate world, for me, I'd be sitting like at Deloitte, and we'd be talking about everybody, and Nike was one of my clients, and I'd be coming up with these ideas of, oh, they could do this and this, and they would come to me and say, that's what the CEO does. That's a CEO vision, and you need to calm down and do the brochure. And
That's where IncubatorU would have worked.
I know, I should have been a member, right?
And then unfortunately, you could have a CEO that is misaligned. They just don't get it. And to be honest, that's really what's happening right now at Nike. The CEO is not aligned to the people, the product. He's taken it on a bad cultural journey. And so I'm hoping the ship turns around.
Yeah. It'll definitely be interesting to watch that, because the stories of these businesses that are so successful, and they go through these valleys. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Definitely.
Yeah, I'm cheering for him, because I still have a few folks out there, but they've got a ways to go.
Yeah. And they lost you, as I said before. They lost at someone that was.
I'm always for hire, so
yeah, they could always come.
I'm probably way more valuable than I was when I was there. So
yeah. So Michael, if there's somebody that would love to work with you, what's the best way to contact you?
So my website is IncubatorU with a U.com. My email is michael@incubatorU.com. And I'm very open and welcome for conversations on LinkedIn.
I love that. Michael, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your expertise.
You're welcome. It's great to be here, and it was a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely. And if you're listening, you want more information about this podcast and also upcoming shows, you can visit acalltothrive.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week.